Welcome, everybody, to the CFF List Best and Worst Performer Predictions for Week 5. I'm Jay Mill. I got my partner, Willie B, as usual. How's everything going, Willie? Ready for some picks?
I am, sir.
All right, good, good. I guess up until this point, we feel like we've done a good job at scoring points in our weekly competition. Um, this week, didn't get so many points, but the players we did pick for the most part, performed as we expected. They just maybe didn't get into that top three or bottom three, that get us the points. Um, as usual, a quick recap. Our goal is to go through the year to date leader list at each position, help sort through the players that we think will have the biggest weeks along with the players we think might have the worst performing weeks that could assist you in making some general start sit decisions or maybe even help you in some daily fantasy decisions of who to put in your roster or maybe even on your prize picks over under predictions for yardage, etc. um, I gained a point on Willie B this week. Like I said, I only got 2 points. He only got one, but every point counts. That narrows the gap. Willie B is leading the season 25-20. We'll discuss those performances as we get into each position's analysis. But again, if we pick the best, we get 3 points. If the player we pick for the best gets second best, we get 2 points. If they get the third best for the week, we get a single point, and it's the inverse for the worst picks. But let's not waste any time, Willie. We're going to keep this one nice and precise for the listeners and talk more about the players than our scoring. But in general, um, I guess anything stand out to you for week 4 before we roll into the tight ends? I know we talked about it a little bit in the waiver watch, some of the matchups that were had, but anything you'd like to say, I guess, before we jump into the week 5 predictions and the recap of week 4?
Not really. I mean, there was just so much movement as far as the tight ends from the week before.
Mm-hmm.
All of them scoring in the top 18, and teams trying to figure out what they want to do, what type of players that they have. So
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be these down weeks where we get less than 5 points scored. So not too deterred by that. Just time to get back on track and get more points.
Right, right. I hear you. I guess the big, as we look at kind of our results from last week, I had picked Gadsden to be the best performer, or you picked Gadsden to be the best
Right.
performer. You thought you were playing it safe. Most people would have. He was the number one tight end, going into the week. Had a tougher game than expected against Stanford. Only ended up with 3.2 points. Similar for me, I picked Brenningstool, who I thought had been, really consistent for Clemson. Just, for whatever reason, didn't get the points against NC State, only ended up with 4.9. Then on the other hand, Claire, kind of had a middle of the pack game. We picked him as our worst, both of us did, and he had
Hmm.
12.6. So he had a decent outing, there. But the real winners, looking at the list, the number 3 tight end, Jack Beck, who is a little bit of a cheat code guy, but eligible for tight end in most leagues, even though he's playing receiver, set the new weekly high score for tight ends, going from, I think, 35 point something points last week to 36.6 this week, which you'll see clearly makes him the new tight end one when we move into the new year to date list. Other standouts were Fannin. He held that number 2 spot down with 28.5. On a normal week, he probably would have had enough to move up to the number 1 tight end spot, but with Beck's performance at 36.6, he kind of leapfrogged over Fannin into that new number 1 spot. Interestingly, we didn't really have any players move out of the top 12 from the tight ends, as you'll see when we scroll down. But another standout performance is Keithy was number 7. He had 23.5. Koziol, who I think Jared in our waiver watch had last week, nailed it there with 26.2. So he was sitting at 8. Let's scroll up and see how this shook things up a little bit. Like I said, you're not going to see any new names in this week's top 12. There's no one out. because technically you don't see Royer listed here at tight end 12, but there's a three-way tie now for tight end 12 between Terrence Carter from Louisiana Lafayette, who had a big game with 17.9 points, and you see Willis from Middle Tennessee move back into the top 12 after an 11.3-point week, which is moves him back up. Here into the top 12 in a three-way tie. But Royer kind of hangs on to a top 12 position. You know, he's been pretty consistent there from Cincinnati. But as mentioned, Beck steals that new number 1 spot. Gadsden, with his poor performance, only dropped to number 4. Koziol's up to 5 from 8. But again, not a ton of movement in terms of where guys are. The biggest drop was probably Brenningstool going from 4 to 9. The biggest move up, as mentioned, was probably Koziol going from 5 to 8. Let's see if we can nail it as far as who's going to have these good performances here this week.
All right. You're going first.
Yeah, I'll go
still,
first.
So.
And now, are we going to say that the 3 tied at number 12 can be chosen here also?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right. So with that, Claire kind of proved us both wrong last week, but I don't like his matchup against Nebraska. He's sitting there at tight end 11. Can we check that Gadsden matchup real quick? Oh, Gadsden's got NC State, which interestingly, man, NC State showing 103rd against tight ends in fantasy, but that did not.
You're correct on that, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, you're correct on that.
Okay.
That should
Who's
be
Gadsden playing this week?
That should be Holy Cross here.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, they've kind of got that one of the final FCS matchups. All right. While you correct that, I'll look around the board here. Harold Fannon's got Old Dominion. Beck going against Kansas. I mean, at this point, I don't know why you'd doubt him. I mean, I think the 1 week I did get points last week after doubting him in week 1. Loveland could be hurt. Are we going to, we had he sat out last week. So we kind of got to be careful of Loveland. I don't know if we should allow people or ourselves to pick him as the worst, by the way. What do you think on that, Willie? Should we consider Loveland injured?
Yeah, since he has a red flag, I mean, I know who I'm picking, so I mean, he's not going to be one that I would pick, but we want to let people know that he does have that shoulder issue.
Well, I think, I don't know if it's the same guy you're talking about. I'm going to go for my best pick first here. I'm going to stick with Koziol from Ball State. Not only is James Madison 134th in terms of their ranking against tight ends as far as fantasy points allowed, James Madison, their weakness seems to be pass defense. They're 118th in passing D. In yardage, so they do give up quite a few yards a game, 276. I'm going to hope that Ball State can keep feeding Koziol and he can get me some points here as the best tight end for Week 5.
All right. Well, I'm a little surprised that you didn't take him, but I'm going to go with like you said, the cheat code.
Okay.
We're going to take Jack Beck. So they get Kansas. I think we're still getting this tight end prediction from Fantrax, but I mean, it may still be a wide receiver issue. I'm not sure, but regardless of the 40th, we're going to go with Jack Beck and him averaging his 25.
Yeah, just to get a little extra knowledge, Kansas is actually, believe it or not, they're actually 40th against the pass also. That doesn't always work out, when comparing the Fantrax ranking against the position. So Kansas is a little bit tough, but, Beck's proven to be the number 1 target there. So I think he's going to get his targets no matter what. Seems like a safe pick to me. I almost leaned that way, but thought I'd give him to you for that one. I'm gonna hand him over to you. And then Brenningstool, is Clemson actually playing Stanford this week? Let's take a quick look. I want to make sure that's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's interesting. Stanford is the team that shut down Gadsden last week.
This is exactly where I was going to go. So that's interesting that you did that.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with that matchup and go against Brenningstool. I'm always looking for a good reason to go against Clemson players. It's not my favorite team in the world. Clemson hater, admittedly. So the fact that Stanford is ninth against tight ends, managed to allow Gadsden only 3.4 points or whatever it was, that'll be my pick for a worst performing tight end. I would probably look for other options if I had Brenningstool in my lineup, if I have another halfway decent tight end.
Yeah. Like I say, I was gonna lean that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. With that, um, I guess I should have just took it with a grain of salt that you were going to take him. But I'll go Gadsden this week only because it's Holy Cross. Yeah, he shouldn't be playing that much.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
let's
think
let's
they shouldn't
let's
have
look
to
for maybe a half.
keep
Yeah,
him in there much either. Maybe this would be
right,
a good week to get LeQuint Allen on track there at Syracuse instead. But I agree.
right.
I almost did go Gadsden because of the too easy matchup against Holy
Hmm.
Cross. Yeah, I can see that logic as well. Yeah, I think though if you've got a guy like Mason Taylor who's a tight end 8, even though South Alabama's been good against tight ends, Mason Taylor should probably thrive. Uh, Tyler Warren against Illinois, seems to be getting consistent targets, even though, again, Illinois is also tough. And, maybe the surprise is neither one of us picked Fannin going against Old Dominion, which doesn't seem like, a team that should really shut him down. I'd probably go with Fannin as maybe another option you could choose very comfortably as your tight end. There's no reason at this point to probably bench Fannin for the rest of the year unless, something really strange happens.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree with that for sure.
All right. So now let's go take a look at wide receiver. At the week 4 results, Nick Nash continues to just prove that he's in a class by himself. He has a 9-point lead in points per game over the number 2 wide receiver, which is pretty amazing, especially since Ty Felton had 35.7 points himself this week. Nick Nash, though, said, forget that. I'll get 45 points and keep my tight end one spot. You would think after a 35, 36-point game, Felton would have been able to maybe leapfrog whoever was sitting there at number 1. But Nick Nash said, hold on. Have you been able to watch any of those San Jose State games closely? Have you seen what's going on there? Admittedly, I haven't been able to tune in kind of single-handedly to watch those games. I missed the Friday night game I think they had last week for the most part. But have you been able to see like why he's doing so well, Willie?
No, actually, I have not. And unfortunately, they have a bye this week, so won't be able to see that. But I do plan on hopefully catching the next 3 when they have Nevada, Colorado State, and Wyoming.
Yep.
All of those are, I would imagine they're going to be fairly. Well, let's see. Nope, they're kind of they're earlier than normal, so we shouldn't have a late game. So
Yeah.
should be able to catch those in the afternoon, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be paying extra attention to Mr. Nash and see because he's on a tear with
Yeah.
these targets.
Yeah.
Uh,
With,
you know,
with those
16
match.
targets.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 targets. He had 9 against Air Force, but then he's had 43 targets the last 2 weeks.
I've never seen that. Like 20. I don't know if I've ever seen 20 targets in back-to-back games by any wide receiver since we've been doing this for 4 years.
Yeah, the volume that he's getting, and then what he's doing with
Wow.
the targets too. I mean, 33 receptions with those
30.
43 targets.
Wow. I don't think that had even really sunk in. That he's had 33 catches in 2 games.
Yes.
And 3 games for the season over 150 yards. If you go back to week 1, he had 170, 225 against Kennesaw State, and then you could say, wow, well those were horrible teams, but then he does it again against Washington State in a
Hmm.
52-54 loss. So that
Yeah.
passing game with Emmett Brown at quarterback is on fire there. To the
Yeah, and I know we're
detriment of the running backs at San Jose State, which you're
right,
used to
right.
seeing dominate.
Which I'm sure we're spending a lot of time on Nash, and rightfully so. But I mean, this is a season for most people: 50 catches, 637 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, that is most decent wide receivers full season, and he's done it in 4 games. Wow, could he have 130 catches this year. Like he's on pace for 150, which I don't think he could match. But I could. You see Nash holding this volume and having 130 catches this season.
Yeah, I mean, hell, if he can stay healthy, I mean, at least 125. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And again, not to just kind of overlook Ty Felton, who's holding steady and showing equal amount of consistency there at number two. You know, he's had several 30-point games already this season himself. So, you know, he's there. You got Travis Hunter, who just kind of keeps sticking around as much as you think he's going to get overworked. You know, he has another 20-point game. Pena from Syracuse. Again, a guy nobody knew when the season started. He has his third or fourth 20-point game. Yeah, he started off the season, if you remember, with 2 games in a row with 2 touchdowns in each game. And Trey Harris is defying the odds at Ole Miss, where we kind of thought forever, they're never going to have like a strict wide receiver one. But Trey Harris has broken the mold there and become the clear wide receiver one at Ole Miss, which we've been looking for them to have for a long time. But that's so you didn't see a lot of movement among this group. You saw a lot of receivers stay on the list. 11 out of the 16, made their way back. Just looking for maybe some disappointing weeks. You had Jalen Noel from Iowa State have 6.9. He was your wide receiver 7. Delana from Fresno State only had 7.8. Those are 2 of the names you're going to see disappear, along with Kyron Lacey from LSU, who had only 5.3 points.
Which is really surprising against UCLA to me.
Yeah. And I guess we can't move forward without mentioning the number 16 receiver who just made his way onto the list last week. I think from deep in the 90s, even though he had some solid week 1 and 2 games, Mr. Devontae Ross from Troy with the 51.8 point explosion against FAMU, which, it's kind of a game you would think, okay, he might not have a huge game because he might not play the whole game. But, yeah, he did have the huge game. He's got 52, which if you scroll up, Willie, let's move up to the new year-to-date list. Let's see where that 51.8 points landed Devontae Ross, the biggest game of the week there. It took him all the way from 16 up to 5, which, again, as far as guys that were within the top 16 already, that was by far the biggest jump. Moved him up really, really high. 1 and 2 stayed the same. Trey Harris leaped from 6 to 3. Switched places with Travis Hunter, basically. But Travis Hunter remains a top 6 guy. McMillan had a bye, so, of course, he didn't really move much, stayed there at 4. But let's see, some of these new names now that you're seeing. You've got Pat Bryant, who has really taken over as the new wide receiver 1 at Illinois, a little bit surprisingly. He was hanging around there in the top 25, but decided to join us in the top 16, shooting up to number 11. Josh Kelly, who I think has been in and out for Texas Tech. He's been in and out of the top 16 already a couple of times, so not a huge surprise that a guy like him would make his way. But then you got Restrepo from Miami, who has been hovering just outside of the top 16. He was at 19 and moves up to wide receiver 14. I just want to look at his games because, he stood out as being very consistent when I saw him appear here. His 4 games, he's had 24 points, 20 points, 20 points, and 22 points. So he's been as consistent as you can get. Not a real high ceiling, but looks like you're not going to have to worry about him having a game really below 20 points if he can keep this up. He has scored a touchdown in every game. I don't know that he'll keep that part of it up, but he's earning more targets, and he had 8 this week, which matched his season high from week 1. So that's a new name that deserves to be here, along with Luke Wysong, who has probably been just as consistent there from, surprisingly, New Mexico State. Let's look at his game log really quick. Wysong averaging 21.3, and he's had 15.5, 26.9, 13.9, and 23.1. So you are seeing some consistency there from the New Mexico State receiver. And then we've got our second true freshman joining us here on the receiver list with Ryan Williams from Alabama. joins Jeremiah Smith, who's here at number 10. So pretty surprising, Willie. I mean, how surprised are you to see two true freshmen in the top 16 wide receivers right now?
Nothing really surprises me now. And then, I give it to these kids who are ready to play.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
some of them, graduate early and enter the program, and then you have some of them who don't. But I give it to these kids who are ready to just jump straight from high school and ready to play big boy ball. So
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, it's not so surprising if you see one true freshman wide receiver pop, but to see two on the list at any point in a season is pretty amazing. I guess the interesting thing will be if you had to pick one. Let's have a little fun like we do. Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams, which one is most likely to finish on this top 16 list? And I doubt both will finish here, but like if one is to finish in the top 16, which one is it going to be, Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would have to say I'm going to go Ryan Williams.
Okay.
Just based on the quarterback to me. So
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I'll just keep it short and say Ryan Williams.
Yeah, and I'm looking his targets. He's had 7 targets and 4 targets the last 2 games. Let's do a quick comparison and see how that matches up with Jeremiah Smith's targets. I think he's getting targeted more, but he's not getting many more points. Well, no, he's going down. Interestingly, he had 9 in week 1, then he had 6, then he had 4. So you're seeing the opposite trend there for Smith. They did play Marshall last week. That might explain kind of his limited targets. They didn't need to use him as much against Marshall since the running backs were running wild. So, all right, I'll go the other way. I'll just say, based on the explosiveness and kind of overall talent, I think Jeremiah Smith is a notch above. So we'll split the decision here, and I'll say Smith is the one that finishes higher and more likely to be in the top 16. You've got Ryan Williams. So with that, though, let's move on to our picks for who we think is going to be the best and the worst of the week at wide receiver from the top 16. I went first with tight ends, so you have the privilege of going first here with the wide receivers.
All right. So
And we've got
I can't obviously I can't take my guy Nash.
Right. Yep.
So
And Ashlock, I was going to just mention quickly, 2 are on bye. Ashlock from Hawaii, your
mhm,
wide receiver 8 is on a bye, and Nick Nash, wide receiver 1, is on a bye.
correct.
Yep.
I'm gonna go. Let me go with my worst here. Well, no, I won't do that because that opens the door for you to grab a guy. So
Okay.
let's see. I'm gonna give Travis Hunter a go.
Okay. All right. Yeah, look, he's going against Central Florida, 130th against, fantasy wide receivers, trying to see where they are in actual yardage per. Yeah, they're 94th, giving up nearly 240 yards a game passing as well. So I'd say that's a pretty solid pick. And, you know, Colorado's, they got to make statements when they can. Central Florida doesn't seem like the toughest opponent, but it is a legitimate opponent with a really good coach with Gus Malzahn, moving into the Big 12 now. This could be a fun little game with, Deion's connection to Florida, all of those Florida receivers on the team. I think there's going to be a lot of incentive for Colorado to try to show out. I don't know that they will, but that actually could be a pretty fun game to watch. I think it's a good pick there with Travis Hunter, really good pick.
Yeah, I mean this could be hopefully a Heisman moment for him. So let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go with the kind of the underdog here, the lesser known. I'm going to go with Luke Wysong in his rivalry game here. Again, I like the way they've been using him, the consistency with which they've been using him. I think it's not a huge rivalry that all of college football is going to be watching, but we know it means a little bit more to these guys. So I think Wysong continues to prove that he belongs on this list. He's going to have a consistent good game. He had 15 targets the last 2 weeks, Willie. We were talking about Nash's targets. This is a guy that had 15 targets in each of the last 2 weeks, and he had 11 targets in week 2 against Arizona. So there's no way he doesn't get double-digit targets again. And it's time for him to find the end zone. He hasn't seen the end zone since week 2. So, look for a 10 catch, 100-yard game with a touchdown from Wysong against his rival there at New Mexico State.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, they're 86th in the country as far as against the pass, and they've only given up 4 passing touchdowns.
Right.
So,
Okay.
this might be interesting as well to
Right.
watch.
Yeah, yeah. What?
Okay.
Let's see. Let's see what time that game is. That's going to be an 8 o'clock Eastern game. So for all of those needing to tune in, I think ESPN Plus is your channel. There you go.
Very well, nice.
Yeah, we got little viewing tips. Viewing tips.
Let's see. Interesting matchups. Interesting matchups.
Yeah. Now we've both picked our best. Time to pick the worst.
hmm let's go. Pat Bryant, he just got on the list, so they're going to Penn State. We'll take Pat Bryant
Okay.
as one that I'm going to stay away from this week.
Okay. Going against Michigan State. I mean Penn State. Sorry, excuse me. 21st against fantasy wide receivers, and trying to see 22nd against the pass, and only Tracy, 2 touchdowns given up in the air from Penn
That's
State.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Did I repeat you? Did you say that already?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't say that yet.
Okay, I was doing some studying while you were talking there too. So, all right, I think that's a good one. I think I got another good one, and maybe the reason, I felt like he'd have a more difficult chance here staying on the list. I'm going to go against Ryan Williams, facing the #1 passing defense in the country, giving up 0 passing touchdowns from Georgia. I think that's a really tough matchup, especially for a true freshman. They do have a great quarterback, much improved, and he was already very good, with Milroe. But I think this is where he could prove me wrong. But I think this is where you see a true freshman kind of have to take the background and let some of those veterans at Alabama step up and put in the work this week. And I don't think Ryan Williams sees the end zone since Georgia's given up none so far this year.
Well, this might surprise you, and obviously, should be the game of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama's only given up 1 through the air, so
Okay. Wow.
let's look at this and say that this is when a game breaks out, and we're gonna have some pass touchdowns given up.
Yeah,
So
which all of that good pass defense makes me just for fun want to break the what we're doing here and take a quick look at their. All right, Alabama's 69th against the run with 132 given up a game. Georgia is 42nd, giving up 110 a game. So, okay, they're not quite as good against the run, but they're still very good all around. We all know that, but I just didn't know exactly where they were sitting. I was just curious since we saw how great they both were against the pass so far this year. So that
mhm.
obviously we all know that's the game of the week. I would assume game day's there. I haven't paid attention much to where that is, but I'm assuming, uh, you know, everybody's going to be tuned in for that one. Yep. All right. So picks are made. We're going to move up to the running backs, which, hey, surprise, surprise. Ashton Jeanty was held to under 15 points last week. He only had 12.7. But of course, it was the week that I picked him. Uh, we knew it was that. Yeah, I kind of got caught up. I thought, okay, they're playing Portland State. You struggle with if a guy's going to get pulled early, but I thought with the way his season was going, he'd have 2 or 3 touchdowns in the first half and still, qualify as one of the best performers. Strategy did not work out. He only got 12.7, which, you know, if you really needed to fill a hole, that's not a bad number, for a waiver pickup kind of guy. But this was Ashton Jeanty, so definitely a down week. Still, amazingly, Willie, his average, even after a 12.7 game, is 53 points a game right now. What do you think
Wow.
about that?
Uh,
Anything to add for our guy there at the top?
not really, other than he's just an amazing back,
Yep.
and can't wait to see him at the next level. To be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. I just want to see how many carries he had there. Yeah, clearly a situation where they wanted to give him a break. He went from 20 and 25 carries in the first 2 to only 11, and he did manage 127. So I wasn't far off in terms of assuming he'd still get his yardage. He just didn't get in the end zone, which hurt me as far as my pick for the best. Henry Parrish, which was your pick, kind of the same situation there against Georgia Southern. He only had 15 points, or 14.9 specifically. So I think we kind of just both got screwed by the fact that they didn't need these guys as much as they had been needing them. In against the
Right.
competition they were playing. Parrish had Georgia Southern, and again, not the worst games. Your Parrish did even better with close to 15. But then Dean Connors, your pick for the worst, had 16.6, the Rice running back. And then I had Tootin, which I was totally wrong, going against Rutgers defense. I thought they'd show a little bit more. Rutgers got the W, which is all I care about, but Tootin did make me look very bad by scoring 30 points when I thought he would be one of the worst performers. So I will have to eat a little crow there and give Tootin his flowers for showing out, even though the quarterback for Virginia Tech didn't do quite as well. He
Yeah.
was about the only thing consistent there for Virginia Tech.
I've kind of underestimated Connors as far as a dual threat running back.
Yeah.
He's quietly had 26 receptions this
Oh,
year.
wow. And that's
So
in 4 games or 3 games?
that's 4 games.
Yeah. Wow, that's still amazing for a running back.
Right. So I mean, he had 9 carries for 51 yards, but then he had 8 receptions on 12 targets.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And last year, comparatively, you could look at this and say, okay, you should have known he was a 43 catch, 403-yard guy, but okay, we knew he could catch, but that was in 13 games. He's got 26 and 4, so he's on pace for more like 75 catches this year compared to the 43 that he had last year. So that's a good note.
Right.
That's a really an excellent observation there. That he's earning points the hard way there for a running back. So if you've got Connors in a PPR league, don't ever sit him. It sounds like, because especially now that they're entering conference play.
That schedule is lighting up.
Yeah,
like a
sure.
freeway. So
all right. So let's see, a couple others here. Caleb Johnson had another, he's got now back-to-back really big games. He had 40.5. He was your running back 6. We'll see where he landed with that big game here in just a minute. Desmond Reed ended up injured, out, did not play for Pittsburgh after kind of getting everybody really excited about the season he's had so far. You have to wonder how serious that injury is, because they were playing Youngstown State, where they likely did not have to use him even if he was capable. Haven't seen the notes on that injury, but just everybody be warned, he did miss the game technically because of an injury. Can you catch that, Willie? Got any notes there from Fantrax? What are they saying? Any injury notes on Reed as far as how bad?
No, it's one of those undisclosed. So basically everything you said, the coach decided to keep him out, didn't suit up, going to give him plenty of rest with an inferior opponent. So
yeah, makes sense. And then just wanted to take a look here. Following his big game, Darius Taylor kind of had a clunker with only 6.7 against Iowa. I think we kind of steered people away from him in our conversation last week, because I had seen him kind of, even though he had 39-1 in the Nevada game, I did see him kind of leave the game a couple of times. Seemed to have something wrong with his leg. He only had 10 carries against Iowa, and they shut him down pretty good. Seems like you just don't want to play running backs against Iowa. Their defense seems to still be as strong as it was last year. Then Jaquindon Jackson, I think besides Jeanty, Willie, as far as players I've been able to see, which again, we can't watch everybody's entire games, but to me, Jaquindon Jackson is probably the second best running back I've seen in games this year as far as his real life performance and production. This guy has just turned into a beast there at Arkansas. Have you been able to hone in and watch him closely?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that this week and the week before.
Yep.
So yeah, I could kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
They're like I said, there's some great backs. I'm interested. He had a bye, so my guy Harvey, interested to see what he can get with the week off of rest.
Yep.
Your guy Kyle Manine guy has been doing really well. So there's just a plethora of backs.
Yeah, I love a good hard-nosed runner, and I didn't realize Quinton Jackson was, the kind of guy to lower his shoulder and just kind of run guys over the way I like to see him do it, as
Hmm.
much as he's been doing in Arkansas. I don't know that that's good for him necessarily in his long term health, but he's one of the strongest and funnest runners that I've seen play this year. Nobody's close to Ginty, but I would suggest anybody that hadn't watched a full Jaquindon Jackson game, tune in and watch this guy work.
Well, I mean, at 6'2" and 230, that's probably what you should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. But he's also athletic at that size, which is amazing. So, um, let's scroll up a couple of the guys that you'll see that disappeared. But amazingly, already this early in the season, you've got 13 out of the top 16 that remain the same, which means only 3 guys exited. Um, One of the surprising ones is Terrion Stewart was all the way at number 4, and he's not on the list after a really tough matchup against Texas A&M. And then also we mentioned Darius Taylor having a poor game against Iowa. He's out. The other name to take an exit was Anthony Tyus, which played a traditionally very good Kentucky team. In hindsight, I'm not sure why we wouldn't have picked Tyus to have a bad game against Kentucky, or Terrion Stewart to have a bad game against A&M. It seems very obvious now, Willie, but
Well,
what were we thinking there?
well, no, we'll have to think about it this way, though. I mean, Terry On is
Mm-hmm.
off the list mainly due to his games because he only has 2 games.
Okay,
So
a
he's
two-game
off the
average. Okay,
yeah, he's off the list because he's not at that 51.
okay,
Aside from him having just the 4.2, but he's automatically ineligible for the list because of
okay,
that.
because he had missed another one because of injury, perhaps. But
Yeah, because
okay,
he hasn't he before the game against A&M, he hadn't played since August 29th.
gotcha. So okay, so he's not qualifying because of injury, and just for the record, then his yeah, so he's not he wouldn't have made it either way, but his
Right.
19.2 average is still you know we know from previous seasons. Yeah, I'm not saying he's somebody you shouldn't be excited about still because they're going to enter
Hmm.
back season where the defense is should be a little easier on him. And it looks like the fact that he came back to play against A&M, he's healthy now. But that's a good point. He's only played in 2 so far this season, so there's a lot more fluctuation in his points per game average there. Is I think what we were trying to say.
Right.
But looking now at the way things shook up, we've got obviously even with the bad game. And I misspoke earlier. I said with the bad game, Ginty was still at 53-1. That was his average last week. He did drop to 39.6,
Hmm.
but still a pretty commanding lead over Harvey, who's at number 2 at 35.5. The guy to watch out for possibly here is on a bye this week. Caleb Johnson moved from 6 to 2. He's averaging 33. Desmond Reed, who was injured for Pittsburgh, now has a bye. So if another reason to not probably worry, he was probably held out because of weaker opponent. Now he gets another week to rest. Hopefully Reed comes back healthy after the bye. You got Sampson from Tennessee is going to be on a bye. 2 guys that worked their way onto the list. The first one here jumped all the way from 19 to number 6. That's the player we're familiar with from North Carolina, Omarion Hampton, kind of getting back to last season's form when he was a top 5 running back. He's up to 26.6 after a 38.3 point game last week, along with Mario Anderson, who went from 18 to 12 after a 36-point game. So Anderson is starting to do things that we expected there in that Memphis offense where, he's can you look that up, Willie? How many catches does Anderson have? I would guess he's starting to pick up there. But I'm just saying that blindly. I'm curious to see kind of how Anderson's
he
catches.
he has 14 for 82.
Okay, so not bad for a running back in 3 games, right?
No, well, I mean, he actually has 4 games.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
So not quite as much as I would have expected, but
hmm
okay. But I would think that that's going to take a start to tick upward, just the way that the offensive coordinator there, Cramsey, likes to feed the passes to the running backs traditionally, going back to his days at Marshall with Rasheen Ali, and then last year with Blake Watson. That's kind of what we expected Mario Anderson to turn into this year, was one of those backs that should at least get 40 catches. So he's not far off of that pace, but I would think that goes up as the season progresses.
hmm
Um,
and then I'm not sure if you mentioned this guy, but here's another slight cheat code that you mentioned about Brashad Smith.
No, it did not. Oh,
Yeah,
Brashard
so
Smith at SMU, yeah, who's got the
SMU, yeah,
wide receiver
yeah,
designation, even though he's
right.
playing running back for SMU, right?
Yes, I mean, like I say, he's more of a running back, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
just based off of his carries. He's had 11, 9, 14, and 18 carries last week against TCU in the big win. But, he is still that dual threat-ish kind of guy. So he has 8 receptions for
Yep.
71 and a touchdown. So he is a running back, but he still has that dual threat um, uh, designation from Fantrax.
Right. So yeah, in most leagues, our home league doesn't allow it, but in most leagues, you can kind of just throw him in wherever you want and kind of create your own new flex position with that kind of a player.
Right,
Uh,
because he would have landed on both of our lists, the wide receiver and the running back lists
yeah,
based on his
yeah,
average.
exactly. And obviously, we're going to put him where we think he's playing more prominently, which is running back. But that's a good point. Another guy I'll mention because again, I I doubted that I had the logic right there at Oregon State in week one, but weeks 2 through 4 have proven that Hankerson um, is more of the clear cut RB1 there at Oregon State. He did it again with another 23.4 point game, which is actually what his average is right now. Hankerson there at Oregon State, after a lot of people thought that he might play second fiddle after week 2, is proving to be the guy. Um, and then, as far as the only other new name, none of these new guys came from too far out. They were at 18, 19, and 20. And Terrio Brown was number 20 and pops in at number 16. And I know we've got him in the Kings Classic, and we've got him for what we are about to see, which is him play against MAC opponents. So I
Hmm.
think if you've got Ontario Brown, we're very excited about what will be coming up after he gets through North Carolina State this week. But good to see him make his way into the top 16. We've now got Jackson and Brown as our backs in the Kings Classic, both here in the top 16, and kind of leading the way for us in our turnaround there, our early season turnaround to get up to 5-3 in the Kings Classic. So we're happy about that. Willie, I guess I got to go first here. You ready for picks for the running back, best and worst?
Yes, we are.
All right, so
I
let's
guess we'll stay where we're at here.
right. Let's see. You, yeah, I think I'm gonna lean on the guy at the top going against Colorado. So we'll now have a couple guys involved in that Colorado UCF game. Should be a fun one, like we said. And I'm going to go RJ Harvey. A lot of people were worried that playing with KJ Jefferson and then Penny Boone being added to the mix, we're going to take away from his production. Willie, you were one of the only people that I heard kind of outright say that wasn't going to matter. You had RJ Harvey even way higher than I did in our preseason rankings. Um,
Yeah, top 5.
yeah, and he's proven that so far with 35.5 points a game. I'm going to lean on him here against Colorado, who's 81st against running backs in terms of giving up fantasy points. And in terms of in real life here, they're also 83rd, giving up 150 yards a game and 6 touchdowns. So I think R.J. Harvey might get number 7 and 8 given up by Colorado this week.
Ooh, ooh, that's a nice one. I like it.
Yep, yep,
I'm gonna go with the hot hand here, the guy
yep.
you're familiar with. We're gonna go Amari and Hampton, and they face
Okay,
Duke
yep,
this week.
good one.
He's that's a big jump. I don't expect. Well, hey, he might actually end up being a top 3 back after this week. If he does what I think he can.
Yeah,
Uh, you know,
they're giving up a lot of fantasy points to running backs, and he's coming along doing what we expected him to do. He's had back-to-back games with 40 points uh, in week 4, and he had 30 or in week 3, and he had 38 points last week. So um, the competition's a little tougher this week, but yeah, I mean we know what he's capable of. He's a top 3 back, top 5 at least last year. So
mhm.
this could be
So
the
what?
week he gets into the top 5.
Right. So what was happening? The first few games, he wasn't getting in the end zone,
Right,
and
right,
so now he's had 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games.
right.
So 3 in each.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that he's going to get get three, but he definitely should have two.
Yeah,
Um, just based on what they've been doing, to opponents, 45-10, and then they lost to JMU, which is really shocking to me.
right.
But losing 70-50.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
and guess what? In fantasy, we don't even care. We don't care if
no, you
North
don't.
Carolina loses. We just want our guys to get
Exactly.
our points. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't care if North Carolina loses to JMU. That's actually even more fun.
Right.
Because wait till we get to the quarterbacks, then we get to talk about why they lost to JMU. All right. So worst pick. Interesting. Jaquindon Jackson's got a tough matchup, but I hyped him up way too much to go against him. I'm definitely not going to do that. I'm looking. Another pick neither one of us made, by the way, is Mario Anderson here going against Middle Tennessee State, who's 119th against running back. Surprisingly, neither one of us took him. But that is a name you guys should look for to have another big game. As I look around to see who might struggle. Um, I'm going to go with kind of the only obvious one here. Well, no, there's two. There's two that could be obvious. I'm going to go with. I can't go Monangai against Washington, even though they're the top team against running backs. But I can go Parrish against Kentucky, who we know from last week has been very solid against the run and against running backs in general. Who was that we said they shut down last week? Yeah, Anthony Tyus. Now, obviously, Ohio is not Ole Miss. Ole Miss is way better. But I think Ole Miss looks to probably air it out a little bit more and not try to force the run. And Parrish, doesn't get what he's been getting all year.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take Tootin.
Oh,
They
okay.
they they
Again,
play at Miami. They're only giving up about 64 yards on the ground. They've given up two rushing touchdowns all season.
yeah, wow, wow.
So I feel comfortable that Tootin may end up being around this area, but
Mm-hmm.
having a rough day
All right, two
compared
questions on
compared to
Miami.
the other guys on the list.
That's good. Good Miami. Quick hitter here. One, Dorian kind of brought this up last week, and I placed a little free wager on it. But one, will Miami win the ACC? Do they have the advantage over, say a Clemson, who's kind of rebounded now and looking very strong? We know Florida State's not really in the mix there anymore. UNC's, way out of the mix. But first question, will Miami win the ACC? Because they look good on both sides of the ball, really good.
Well, I mean, obviously they're going to have a chance. I can, hmm,
Yeah, Maryland's the
you
only,
know,
you're looking at a Maryland,
yeah, no,
Pittsburgh.
no,
Yeah,
no.
Clemson's that's going to be looks like it's shaping up. Could potentially be a good ACC championship there if we get Clemson Miami if Clemson
Right.
stays on the right track. But then sounds like based on you kind of not giving a resounding yes, but a probably. Then what are their chances at getting to the national championship? I'm not going to say winning it, but getting to it.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think once you get in the tournament, it's anybody's ball game. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they're quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, once we talk about this quarterback and everyone's saying, who's the favorite for the Heisman right now, and you're talking about their quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
what a story it would be for Cam Ward.
Yeah.
But I'd say they obviously they have a shot.
Yeah. Well, and by the
Eh,
way, the interesting note there is Miami does not play Clemson in the regular season this year, which is interesting. We would only be able to see them play in the ACC championship if that works out. So that's a little
mhm.
interesting ACC tidbit. Tidbit. It looks. I think that's your matchup there, and um, I I was
I
willing to
mean,
put a little $5 plus $1,800 bet on Miami to win it all. And I thought that was worth a scratch off.
yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule, I mean, their toughest game was early November against Duke.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yeah. So it's a team that I really kind of overlooked in the preseason as far as having as good of a chance as they do. I thought I did consider them for the conference, as a possible winner, but I didn't really think of them as like a Final Four or maybe even a Final Eight team there once the playoffs come around. So it should be interesting. All right, so I don't want to sidetrack us too much, but that's I just you brought up Miami there in terms of holding back Tootin, which is what made me think of it. But yeah, I think we got some
Gotcha.
good picks. We're still moving at a good pace, so let's keep it up. Let's go take a look to wrap things up at the QB position, which is where I scored my only points of the week with my prediction of John Mateer leading the way. He ended up being the second best performing quarterback, I believe, out of the top 16 last week.
Hmm.
Next to Horvath, who shocked the world with 63.1 points out of Navy. He was sitting there at 14, so we shouldn't have been totally surprised that he had a big game. But I think just getting 63 points blew everybody away with Horvath. Any thoughts on not just Horvath, but kind of jumping ahead to who's in the new list? Just these service academy quarterbacks kind of stepping up. Guys who typically aren't necessarily in the top 20, even the top 25. They might have a couple of breakout games, but are we going to see these two service academy quarterbacks, Horvath and Daly from Army, stick around in the top
Well,
16 or even top 25?
I'd love to see that, but they're gonna have to show me, just a little bit more. But before we go back into that, but I mean, Cam Ward still getting his 32-point average, and I didn't get any points. That is just more of a story to
Oh, okay.
me
Yeah, yeah.
than
Right, right.
anything else. Um,
Yep.
but and then Holstein improving on his average. He was averaging roughly 26 points a game. He gets 43.
Right, right, right.
Uh, so so a little bit more important, and not more important, but
Yeah,
it's going to be a little harder for the service guys to compete when you have these others who are still going above
yeah,
their averages. So I
yeah.
don't
You
see
look.
Horvath scoring 40, 50, 60 points. Have to look at the matchup. I mean, that Temple one was Temple's just having a down year.
Yeah, and
Um,
you just reminded me of something too to give ourselves a little pat on the back in terms of predicting the outcome this week. It looks like 8 out of the 14 quarterbacks that played in the top 16 scored 30 plus points last week, and I do recall us saying like this was going to be a tough week to pick the best players because it looked to us like all of the quarterbacks were going to have really good weeks, and for the most part, they did. I mean, your low this week was like looks like a Morton from Texas Tech who had 14 and a half. Then you had to jump up and look at Taylon Green who still had 18, which isn't horrible. You want
no,
your quarterback to get at least 20. He was close. You're not going to be crying if you get 18 from Green, but those were your two worst performers from the top 16 right there at basically 15 and 18 points. And then you jumps up to Chandler Morris with 22.4 as the third worst performer, and that's a pretty decent outing to get 22.4.
right. And then so I picked Dampier, which he had 24.2. So I mean, he was
Right.
close,
Right.
but like I said, these quarterbacks were, and like I said, we figured that they were going to have a good week. But
Yeah.
30 is that number.
Yeah, and it looks like clearly with Pittsburgh sitting Reed out, they definitely said, okay, Holstein, we're going to let you take over here completely against Youngstown State while we rest our new star running back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hoover just kind of Hoover had 33. Klubnik had 33.3. So those were your 15th and 16th ranked quarterbacks, and they're sitting there getting you 33. So, and
Hmm.
again, congrats to you, Willie, on kind of predicting the mindset of Clemson after losing early in the season. That they've got something to prove now, and talking me into picking up Klubnik in our Kings Classic as one of our two starting quarterbacks there. So props to you on identifying Klubnik's future there for the season at Clemson.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That 50-yard run, that scoot, looked pretty good, didn't it?
Exactly, and that's hard for me to watch because I don't want Clemson to score, but in real life. But
Yeah.
gives me a reason to cheer for them in fantasy for sure now. So let's see how things shook up. The new list is looking. Our guy John Mateer doesn't have totally demanding lead here. He's after Horvath's huge game of 60-plus points. He moves all the way from 14 to QB2 with 39.1, getting him within 1.5 points of the number one spot, which is Mateer, who's got 40.6 a game. Milrow had a bye, so he just kind of gets bumped down because he didn't play one position to QB3. Jackson Dart continues his consistent season after being Mr. Inconsistent last year. Lopez, I think, wasn't a big surprise to everybody, but I don't know if everybody necessarily thought he was going to be a top 5 QB. He'll have a tough outing this week against LSU. Cam Ward, you mentioned, is sitting tight, holding his spot down at 6, but then Holstein jumps from 13 to 7. All right, now let's pause here. The guy we teased when we were talking about running backs is JMU's Alonzo Barnett. Shares a last name with you, Willie B, if for those wondering what the B stood for. First of all, any relation? Do you know this Barnett, Alonzo?
Well, we don't all know each other, so I'd have to do a little bit more research
Okay. All right.
to see where he's from. But
You might want to look into that.
all right.
All right. But yeah, let's see. So all he's done this year is come out and get 26 points in week 1. Down week in week 2, but even though it was a tough game against Garner Webb, it was 13-6. They didn't have him, doing as much. But then comes back and gets 57 this week. So, do you have an idea yet of which Alonzo Barnett we're going to get? Are we going to get the 25-point guy, the 6-point guy, or the 50-point guy for the rest of the season, Willie? What do you think the real deal is here with Mr. Barnett?
Well, I tell you what, we knew what JMU was going to possibly look like, just based on the staff and everything. You're probably going to see that, especially this week against Ball State, for sure.
Horrible defense. Yes. Defense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so if they go to North Carolina and put up 70,
yeah,
they better put up 50 on Ball State.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
we talked about them during the waiver watch. Let's just let people know how bad Ball State's defense is. I'm going to total defense here. Ball State is 133rd in total defense, giving up 532 yards a game in 3 games. They've given up over 1,500 yards in 3 games.
They give up 213 on the ground.
Yeah.
Along with 7 rushing touchdowns. So, and let's not even talk about the air. So,
right.
they should hang a half 100 on them. So,
yeah, and this is a guy who, has proven he can be a dual threat. He's got 203 yards in the season, a couple of touchdowns there. So he's not one dimensional. He had 13 for 99 against NC. Each of the 2 previous games, he had 9 carries. So he's had an 89 plus yards in 2 of his 3. So look out, Ball State. JMU's coming, and this is the old Holy Cross staff where Sluka came from. So kind of what you saw from Sluka, in the FCS that got him to UNLV, and now who knows where. This is the staff that likes the quarterback to run. And, Alonzo Barnett seems to be, filling that role really nicely for them. So JMU is not missing a beat after losing their staff to Indiana. So we just had to pause because when you get a name like this kind of emerge, seemingly out of nowhere, you gotta try to figure out what the real deal is. So,
and then the other one that you were talking about is going to be Daly, right?
Yeah, Daly is the other new quarterback, one of the 2 new quarterbacks on the list. Again, another Service Academy guy. I would say a little more consistent than Horvath. He had 21 in week 1, 17.5 week 2, and then 44 this week, 44.8. I'm kicking myself. There were a few big leagues where he was available to pick up last week, and I could have got him for free, but didn't do it. So should have got him. Now people are having to pay a little bit more money for Daly.
Yeah. So I mean, going back and we'll make our picks here real quick. Yeah, Horvath, to me, he has that chance to stay here. He's already has 7 rushing touchdowns, and that schedule's probably not really going to get any harder.
Okay.
I know they play Notre Dame, but UAB, Air Force, Charlotte, then the Notre Dame, like we said, but it's not really that tough. So I mean, if they can commit to the passing game like they have, and we know what they're going to do rushing, he has a chance to finish in the top 16.
Right, right. And that's Horvath from Navy you're talking about. I'm just looking.
Correct.
Yeah, the Daly's getting it all on the ground, guys. He's got 58 attempts, 340 yards, and 5 touchdowns compared to only 3 passing. So it's kind of classic Navy quarterback production there, but
Yeah.
at a slightly higher
And
level. So
yeah, but then you look at Horvath, and he's actually doing the exact same thing on the ground
right,
that
right,
Daly's doing.
yeah,
And then plus he has his 5 passing touchdowns. So
gotcha. Yeah, and looking at Daly's got some juicy matchups here too with Temple and Tulsa. So
hmm
with those notes, let's pick a best and a worst, and we'll wrap this thing up.
yep, easy like we talked about. We'll go with the namesake. We'll go Alonzo Barnett against Ball State.
Okay.
I like to say if they don't score 50, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, I'd almost like to go Daly down there going against Temple, who's given up a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks. But if it's not broke, don't fix it is the old adage. So let's go John Mateer going against Boise State. We know Boise can produce on offense. I love the fact that they could potentially be in another shootout like they were against San Jose State. I just like them being able to play this Mountain West schedule. I think that's going to help Mateer for the rest of the season. So yeah, let's stick with him.
All right. Need to fix this real quick.
Okay.
I know they both weren't playing Texas A&M, so
All right.
um, ooh,
Pick
juicy matchups here.
the old Nino Brown phrase, the juicy matchups.
Yeah, the juicy matchup. Let's look at our guy. Let's see if he was up and down this week. Oh, he held steady. I was talking about Jackson Dart. He held steady.
Yep.
Didn't have a down week, which is a little surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Man, everyone has some really good matchups.
Again, just
So again,
another big week for the top 16
yeah,
quarterbacks.
I think another big week. So I'm gonna go with the guy who probably should not be in the game very long, maybe.
Okay.
Um, uh, wow. Let's see before I make that prediction. Um, no, we'll go this route. We'll go Giovanni Lopez since they're going to LSU. I was
Right.
thinking about taking Kyle McCord since they have Holy Cross, but
Yeah, good catch. Yeah, that's
I'll
it. They're
change my mind.
probably going to be outmatched in that game.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll go Giovanni Lopez to have a down week
Yeah, even though it's a team
from
that
his
put up
32
87. Yeah, team that put up 87, and yeah, who'd they surprise last week? Let me
App
see.
State.
Yeah, had a big but LSU is not App State. I think they finally
No,
get shut down this week. I agree.
yeah, I mean because they lost to North Texas,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it
Okay.
might be a little rough.
All right. And hey, we've given him props for being consistent. You just double check the numbers, and it seems to be Jackson Dart's season. But just because, like you said, there's a lot of teams playing bad pass defenses this week in the top 16. My choice is between really Taylon Green going against Texas A&M, but I think the Kentucky defense is better than that, and Jackson Dart will struggle the most. Kind of the classic cliche from this show. He might still have a good game, but he's going to be competing in this competition against quarterbacks that will have better games. So I'm going to say Jackson Dart. Probably, frankly, still gets 18 or 20, but maybe not much more than that this week.
Yeah,
And
not his 34-point average. So yeah, that's a good point. I have Dart in our home league, so really not gonna put any Matt Mojo on him to fail. So that's why I wasn't taking him. But Kentucky's defense, like you're saying, they've only given up 2 passing touchdowns. They give up a little over 140 a game through the air. So yeah, I like that. I like that pick.
all right, cool. Yeah, and I don't really see any quarterback on this list I would look at straight up, except maybe Lopez, and say they're going to get under 20 points. Like Lopez might be the only one. Um, that I would, if I had to bet, will they get over or under 20? Lopez might literally be the only quarterback I'd bet to go under, and everybody else would be over 20 points in my
Yeah,
assessment.
and then like I said, Kyle McCord, and that's only because he should play a half.
Yeah, that's true. That's
So
true. That you're right. Yeah, against Holy Cross, it's tough to predict there. Well, Willie, always fun talking uh, football, college football here with you, and I think we're pretty efficient this week. Happy with this conversation. Hopefully, everybody else is too. Hopefully, we've helped some people make some decisions. I will leave the final words for you.
Up as always, thank you for watching and listening, and good luck this week.
All right.